Hello all! Today I'm going to explore World War I, 1914 to 1918. This is an SPI game, and the version that I have here I found at my friendly local gaming store in the bargain bin. Yes, I went dumpster diving and I pulled out a bargain. This is an SPI game, World War I. It was originally published, this version is published in 1975. There was two versions of the 75. I think there was a one that was in strategy and tactics, and then there was one that was in a folio, I believe. So I'm not. This just came in a bag with the counters already punched, the map, rules, and counters. And so not sure which version this is because I didn't have any signs to tell if this was the. Don't know if the folio came this way or if the magazine version. This might be the folio because it does look like it's detached. Although, yeah, I mean there are staples that looks like that were here. So maybe this was in the magazine version. But this has been reprinted over the years, and I think they actually made a box version of it. And I don't know if Decision Games has now taken this over, but it's a classic World War I design. It has kind of the standard SPI look to it. You've got triple column rules. Not that many pages of rules. I mean, you're only looking at, it's R8, so 8 pages of rules. That's not much to do a strategic level World War I game, and it also has the charts in here as well, which kind of tells me maybe this is the magazine version. And, this was a kind of a classic. Again, I was not a SPI person back in the day. I was more Avalon Hill. I only kind of came to SPI later on and started to appreciate, I guess, what it did for the hobby. But this is an interesting game. It's interesting on a couple of fronts, pardon the pun here. Number one, or more than a couple of fronts. Number one, the map here is different looking. I mean, rarely do you see a map that of World War I or World War II, for that matter, that puts France all the way up here in the corner with just very little to deal with. Italy is dangling over here and kind of have France and Italy on a border, and then the rest of the map is taking up Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Russia. Now, one of the reasons they did this is because they can display both the action on the east front and west front on one map, and this game, much like the old Avalon Hill Guns of August, kind of plays out the way World War I played out, and they kind of play out somewhat similar in that the West Front really bogs down. The two sides kind of just line up and are relatively static, and all the action or mobility is over on the Eastern Front. And that was my experience with playing Guns of August with Avalon Hill. I played that several times, and that was my experience with this as well, is that the mobility is all on the East Front until Russia is out of the game. So the map is a little bit different take on things. The combat system is a different take on things. Now, if you go through the rules, a lot of the things, it has a lot of the typical strategic level rules that you would expect are found in here. There is, movement and stacking and zones of control and that. There's also kind of victory point hexes, or there's these resource centers that are, if you can see here, are the pick and shovel marker. Those hexes are resource hexes, and they also are going to be victory point hexes at the end of the game. I think they're worth like 5. Yeah, it says here 5 victory points. So that's really where you're trying to go for, and they're all throughout Germany here and throughout the lowlands and into France. Those are the basically the goals of the game, is to go for those. There's only 3 types of terrain. You have clear, you have rough, and you have coastal, and that's it for terrain. So there is terrain, but it's not there's not a lot of variation there. Movement points are consistent across the board, 5 movement points. However, there are different movement costs for clear and rough. And you also get a bonus for riding on the rails. These lines here only use, like, I think, a third of your movement to ride on the rails. So, or move via the rails. So, all that seems like kind of standard fare. So what's different about the combat and how that is portrayed? Well, you don't necessarily eliminate units when you do combat. There's a combat results table, and this will tell you what your losses are, but the losses are not on the counters. If you look at the counters here, like here's a German counter here. Let's go in a little bit more here. So you've got the attack and defense. That's not movement, because all the counters have the same movement. So that German counter has a 4 attack, 6 defense, and Germans are gray. Austrian Hungarians are kind of a yellow or goldish. There's like the 2-3 there. And these are the typical, this is SPI standard counters of the day. There's a U.S. force, 4-4. And, U.S. is kind of a lighter green, and the Russians are dark green. There's a 3-3. France is light blue or powder blue, and interesting, British is kind of a dark blue. So, kind of interesting color choice there. But what you notice here, you have an attack and defense, but you don't have, there's no steps. They're one-sided. So, how do you eliminate these units? Well, you can choose to eliminate after a subsequent attack, but, the initial attack is all kind of handled by these, they're called CRPs, or Crips is the way they tell you to pronounce it here. If you look in the rules here, they have combat resource points are a quantification of the ability of a nationality to absorb losses in combat and to build units. CRPs pronounced Crips are recorded on the Crip track found on the map. So up above here, you'll see all these tracks over here that go up to like 95, and so that's where you're going to be keeping these Crip counters to the Crip keepers to keep track of all the resource points. And so those Crips serve multiple purposes. Number one is your resource points, which you're also keeping track of that down here in the turn track as you go through the game and go through each year. Each of the different nationalities are going to get different, kind of resource points, like, 4 for Britain, 20 for France, and so on. And they're going to change over time. And so you're playing from 14 to 18, and with a summer and winter turn for each one of the years. And this is what the resources are. And so that's also affecting how you get units or reinforcements or what have you, but it's also keeping track of your losses. So when you have combat and you have a loss, you first take it off the Crip chart. So you're going to mark down whatever the loss is. Let's go up above here a little bit more. So whatever the loss is, you're going to mark it off of this chart up here for the attacker and for the defender. And the combat results table, much like a lot of World War I charts, is defense favors the defense. There tend to be more losses on the attacker side than on the defender side in the combat results table. But you're going to take those losses off the crypts chart first, and then after subsequent attack, I think there's like you get like 3 attacks in a turn. So there's quite a bit of combat in this game because you only have like these 10 turns here. But the first one goes off the crypts, and then you can make a decision: do you want to retreat? And you can also make a decision: do you want to lose the unit? Right. So there's not a lot of elimination in this game because you're going to take initial losses off the crypt chart, and then you're going to probably retreat. Then you're probably going to, if when push comes to shove, eliminate a unit. So a lot of it is up here in the crypt chart. Plus, that's also how you're managing your resources and that for reinforcements. So an interesting balance how they merged combat losses and resources and bringing in fresh troops all into one kind of tracking device. I found that to be very interesting. And if I haven't, I don't think I mentioned it yet, but this is a James Dunnigan design. The SPI man himself, James Dunnigan. This is one of his designs. So it's a very interesting design in that regard and how they do that. I don't see a lot of games that combine that, and in a lot of respects it fits World War One because it was such a slog and such there were so many forces that were forced against each other that you didn't have elimination of a whole units. I mean, there was to where you would break a gap in the line or the trenches, so to speak. You had the forces just absorbing more and more casualties over time, and on this scale where you don't have a lot of territory to move into, plus there wasn't a lot of territory taken in on the Western Front. It was kind of a back and forth, but over the same ground in a lot of respects. I mean, there's multiple battles on the Marne and multiple battles on the Somme and Verdun and the like. I mean, they were fighting over the same ground quite a bit. So this absorbing the casualties on a track without losing units or even retreating all the time feels like World War One, at least in my opinion. So different map, different combat results, and but the rest, you have the victory points, limited terrain because we're at a strategic level. Very, very tight package. I mean, it puts a lot or tries to cover a lot. I mean, we're covering all of World War One on one map, and with some, in my opinion, somewhat novel. I mean, for 1975, this is probably relatively novel concepts on how they're doing how the combat results interacts with this crypt track. So anyway, I pulled this out of I had no experience with it until I found it in the bargain bin. And the map is seen some time, or it's warped a little bit. I mean, it's a paper map, but it's got some puffs in it. Nothing that plexiglass will not cure over time. The rules are crimpled a little bit, but they're not marked or anything. They're very readable. They're very it's typical SPI. It's all good. The counters I did in inventory. I think I have all the counters. Pretty sure I have all the counters, and it's standard SPI fare of that time frame. So all in all, happy with the purchase. Happy to finally experience this game, and love to know your thoughts on it. I mean, this has been around for a long time, and so I know it's been played and it's been reprinted and it's been done in different versions. So love to know what any of you think about this. I kind of like it. It doesn't play it doesn't take very long to play either. It's not one of those ones that Guns of August could take quite a bit of time because it just turns into a slog and you're just waiting for Russia to get kicked out and then do one push on the western front, one or two pushes on the western front, and then the game's over. But it takes a long time to get there. This gets to that same spot in a lot quicker time. One of the ways that they handle that in this game is that combat losses for Russia are like double. So if they are doubled when attacked by Germans, so that's going to knock Russia out of the game quick. If you want to keep Russia in the game, you've got to be successful in your attacks, or at least avoid combat losses by the Germans, because that's going to double. So that's going to show that effect of they're using up a lot of their resources, their crypts, really quick. They're really going down that track at double the pace of anybody else. So that's an interesting way how they kind of built that in there as well. So anyhow, that's what I thought I'd bring to you today. Just a little exploration and review and look back, so to speak, at World War I, 1914 and 1918 by James Dunnigan himself. I liked it getting into this. That crypt track was interesting, how that kind of worked and fit together in the way you did the combats, and it had to hit the crypt track first, then you can choose to retreat and possibly eliminate, and it kept units on the board, and it kept that static front present at all times, which is kind of what happened in World War I. So anyway, that's what I have. Again, love to know your comments on this. Love, hate, stayed away, anything you have to say, be interested in it. I found it interesting. Again, it was just a different approach, and I'm always looking for different perspectives on how some of these engagements are simulated, and so I found that interesting. Anyway, that's what I have. Thanks so much for stopping by. Appreciate it. Best way I know you stop by is drop me a comment. Let me know what you think or what you're thinking. Have a good one. Thanks for watching.